Welcome to Wellsprings of Faith. My name is Father Liias. I am a Roman Catholic priest and a resident here in Melrose, where we're taping this program, and also a priest on the staff of St. Patrick's Church in Stoneham, Mass, our next door neighbor. Our program, Wellsprings of Faith, which has actually been going on for almost 30 years now, is an interview show to welcome people and hear about their journey in faith. Today I welcome Dr. Gilbert Lavoie. He is a physician and has given his life's work as a Catholic Christian to being a doctor. However, he's also been involved in international medical issues and concerns. He's also run for Senate. He's been involved in public policy questions of euthanasia and other things. And he also has had a very long interest in studying the Shroud of Turin. We're actually going to be doing a whole separate show just on the Shroud. Welcome.
Very nice to be here,
I
Father.
figured there's too much to do in a half hour, so we're going to split you up into two parts. And the first part is really the main purpose of this show, which is a person's spiritual journey and life, how they've come to faith and exercised and expressed that faith in their lives. So come and talk about your journey in faith, all the far back as you can remember.
Well, I think I was very fortunate. I was actually born to parents that were Catholic, that brought me up Catholic. I went to a Catholic grammar school.
Where'd you grow up?
Springfield, Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. Were they a pretty devout family?
Oh yes.
Were they also at home as well as just taking you to church?
Right. My father was a surgeon. He was always busy, working hard.
Himself.
And my mother was worked at home and took care of me.
The kids.
I was an only child. And I think I was very fortunate to be born at all. My mother had a number of miscarriages, and one day my father came in and he said to my mother, he said, to have this one, you're going to have to stay in bed during this period of time.
Wow.
During the pregnancy. And she did.
She did.
And because she kept losing the babies over the years. And so here I am.
So here you are. You're a miracle baby.
It was a decision of my father that really brought me into the world, if you say, from a medical perspective.
Right.
And but anyway, here I am.
Oh, well, I'm glad you made it out of the womb. These days, not everyone does, not
that's
just
right,
from miscarriages.
That's right. That's a very sad part of what's
sad
going
part
on
of our
in the world.
culture, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So you grew up in a Catholic home, Catholic school, and do you remember particular moments in your life that were kind of profound or moving or spiritual, a sense of God's presence in your life?
Well, I think that you start off with the nuns. I'll have to say that when I look back on my experience of those 9 years when I was with the nuns, that I'm really amazed on how well they taught us not only the faith, but civics, geography, math, English. I mean, it was really a terrific education.
Well, we constantly hear these horror stories about the mean nuns who sister so-and-so and frighten the kids to death, but you had a good experience.
We had a good experience. We had, it was very interesting. I was in a bilingual school. We spoke English in the morning and French in the afternoon.
French, wow.
And one of the things I think was really amazing, we'd have every once in a while a new flood of kids that would come in. They'd come in from Canada, and all they could do is speak French.
Yeah.
And I remember being in the second grade, and one of my classmates, I had gotten to know him well. He just lived not far from the school, and he only spoke French. But by the end of the year, he was speaking English fluently. No worries, no nothing. It was just a bilingual school. How we quickly learn another language at that age.
I'm curious, in the parochial school education systems of that era, of course, was a major part of Catholic life,
right?
And it really was a wonderful mission to the immigrants. As this testifies, was this true in a lot of schools that were intentionally bilingual, or was this a French order or some kind?
Well, it was Catholic? There were a lot of French in Springfield,
right?
And I think there was another school with I'm not Polish possibly,
Yeah.
where they were bilingual.
Right. Of
And
course, the
coming
Irish
in.
immigrants, it was not an issue, but
Right.
except for the accent, right? Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, so that was formative in your life as a
Right.
young boy.
So they gave, the nuns gave us a great background, but it was really interesting as I got into high school, and then I went to, 2 years I went to a Catholic high school, then I went to a prep school where there was no, they were very good. We would, every Saturday, we would go to, they'd have a talk at a church nearby. It was a Protestant church, and the minister would give a talk, and we'd sing. So it was oriented toward being good and godly in that sense, but we didn't have formal courses in theology or school or whatever. And then I went on to Boston College. And there I started to think in terms of, actually high school and in college, that all these miracles that I heard about, when I was younger, that they just weren't happening around me. I just didn't see any of these things going on. And so I had this sort of doubt about all of this in a sense, But but I sort of got over that doubt. And as I've gotten older, and I look back with a more mature view on what they taught us, I realized that all the things that they were talking about were actually quite recent. When you were young, you thought they were way, way in the past, but they weren't. Things were happening in the Second World War and so forth, things that were not that far historically back. So they were true.
So it wasn't just the biblical miracles.
These were,
there's a lot of tradition.
As in life, the bigger vision of life, of what happened, what people did, and the sacrifices people made.
Right.
Anyway, so it was a great. I'm here to talk about how wonderful those nuns are.
Yeah. So you never had your typical often a teenage rebellion against it. There was a moment of questioning, but you never abandoned the faith and became dissolute or anything.
Right. No, I didn't abandon the faith. No.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you're a little older than I am, but I remember the formation that I received. I, of course, was a Protestant, Episcopalian, growing up. And even in Sunday school, but certainly by the time I got to college, and most particularly at seminary of all places, there was a very modern, what I call a modernist bias against anything miraculous. And there was an effort to basically explain away the miracles in the Bible as either as some natural explanation or more likely as made up mythology to kind of elaborate or exaggerate, something like Jesus was a very holy man, and so they made up these stories about him. And that was the prevailing kind of way of dealing with those things. And and I remember the first parish I worked in, you'd be interested in this being a physician, the priest asked me to help him with the healing mass on Wednesday morning. It was an Episcopal church. I said, the healing mass? What's a healing mass? I'd never... And people came to Mass, they prayed for them with the laying on of hands, as Jesus did in the Bible, and we saw miracles occasionally, not all the time.
Right.
Well, even Jesus didn't. It says there were certainly places he couldn't heal either. But we saw, and that kind of, I said, what are these people doing? I just learned in seminary, Jesus didn't heal. But it was kind of a paradigm shift into the supernatural.
Right.
So anyway, back to you. I'm sorry to get in my life.
No, that's fine. I think we got to learn a little about you too.
Yeah. Well, it is. I think that's been a kind of prejudice in our culture, the kind of modernist anti-supernatural prejudice.
There is, and it takes a while to. And I went through that in a sense because of what I just said about miracles.
Yeah, right.
But in life, as I've gotten older, and especially with my work in the shroud, I've changed my mind on that totally.
So back to college. So you're in college, and where did your faith take you next?
Well,
or life take your faith next?
Well, I think that part of it is what I plan to do. My father was a surgeon, as I mentioned, and my father died when I was 10.
Oh.
And so that brought me there's two things about that. One of them is that I sort of got ahead of myself in life because I was always with adults. I had no brothers and sisters, so
right.
so anybody we had at the home, whatever, other than the kids I played with in school, whatever, I've had plenty of that friendship and so forth. But at my home, I was always with adults, or if my parents would have a party, they'd all be adults.
Yeah.
So I grew up, in a sense, speaking with adults all the time, from childhood on, all the time,
Yeah.
Rather than kids, in a sense. And that sort of pushed me a little forward in life. Then when my father died, I mean, then at 10 years old, I felt that I had to be the father, the male of the family,
Yeah.
to take care of my mother.
Yeah.
So that brought me into I matured very quickly at that point. And then I became very serious about studies and work
Yeah,
and so
I
forth.
see. Wow.
But by the time
Did
I
that
get
devastate you around your faith issues? Sometimes.
I'm sorry?
Did that devastate you around the questions of faith? I mean,
No, actually,
losing your father, God, why did you take my dad? Sort of question I've heard kids say when they've lost a parent.
well, it's a shocking, terrible thing. There's no question about it. But I was always confident that he was in heaven.
Okay.
It was a really
So your
wonderful.
faith was a consolation, not
was
a,
a
not a
consolation.
problem. Yeah.
Right. So it was a really wonderful consolation. I said, my father's in heaven. He's with God. And so I've carried that through my life.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Great.
Very,
Yeah.
very interesting. But by the time I got through high school, and I had decided I wanted to be a physician myself. And so in college I went into pre-med, and from there I fortunately got into medical school and went through medical school. And then I got, while I was through medical school, I was interested in doing work, missionary work of some kind. Not, I wanted to get married and so forth, but I wanted to sort of go out and help the poor.
Yes.
And I had that great desire to do that. And so as I got through and went through my residency, I finally got married and met a wonderful woman who had some of the same dreams that I had. We both went to Johns Hopkins. She got an MPH there as well as I did. And we went from there to thinking in terms we'd like to do something.
Missionary.
So after I graduated,
Was she a Catholic Christian or was
she was Methodist.
Methodist?
Yes.
But you became a Catholic to
Yes.
marry you, huh?
Well, no, actually, we got married, and what happened was that she wanted to be married in her parents' church.
Ah.
And what we did is we had a Catholic priest come in.
Okay.
So we had
So
a
an
Methodist,
ecumenical wedding in those days.
right, an ecumenical wedding, and that's what we had. And we had talked about children, and I said, that was important to me. I wanted my children brought up Catholic, and my wife consented to that.
Oh, okay.
And so after the years went by, many years went by, my wife decided that, looking at the faith and reading some books and so forth, that she came to say, this is where I want to be.
Oh, okay.
I never forced her or pushed her to do
that's
that.
good.
She just came on her own.
But early on, you did have a common vision of serving mankind through medicine as kind of
Yeah, it was. We
missionaries.
After I came out I had a great job in the service. I was chief of epidemiology, communicable diseases for the European Command. We had a major outbreak of hepatitis there and we did a study. This was back in the early 70s, and we weren't sure what was going on, but I did an investigation, and of course everything was, now it's very simple, but it was all IV drug use at the time.
Wow.
And that was because I was there I was a veteran of the Vietnam War. In the Vietnam War, they picked up a lot of that from Vietnam coming back home.
Right.
And so a lot of drugs got into the service. And then from there, once I left, I decided that I wanted to do work in it was a smallpox program worldwide, going to eradicate smallpox worldwide. So I traveled to Geneva and to meet with the people involved. And then they said, well, where do you want to go? And I said, well, I want to go where the action is. Where's the smallpox? That's where I want to go. And they said, well, that's Bangladesh. So I said, well, that's where I'm going. So he said, fine. So I ended up flying into Bangladesh and not knowing what I was going to come across, whatever. So I was there as a short-term consultant, and there was, it was really quite an experience where I learned so much. Learned to basically, there you were sort of given an assignment. They would sort of help you out. You get a driver because you weren't allowed to drive. They wouldn't let you drive, but they would hire a driver that either spoke some English or didn't speak some English. It was we go right out into the boonies in certain areas of Bangladesh. I mean, away from, we had at the time we didn't have cell phones, things like that.
Yeah, right.
In fact, there was the rare, radio, which I did not have.
Yeah.
So you're out there, and you're out there by yourself.
Yeah, I remember as a young priest, I spent some time in a sabbatical doing some missionary work in rural Kenya, and similarly, they provided a driver for me, but who barely spoke English, and we would be off gallivanting through the countryside. It was quite an adventure. So you were part of, one of the great victories in medical history is the.
It was exciting.
Getting rid of smallpox.
It was
this plague that had killed millions of people, a scourge of the planet. It was one of the great medical triumphs in our time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Blindness, death.
Yeah. I mean, because as we're taping this, we're still in the middle of this latest COVID pandemic, but again, that's a great aspiration for almost anything we confront, the victory over smallpox.
Right. Yeah, that was a wonderful thing, a wonderful experience. In fact, we used to, every so many years, we would meet as a group. And after 25 years, actually, the whole group met at my home in Boston.
Oh, you had a reunion, huh?
Yeah, we had a reunion of people in Bangladesh.
Oh.
So we meet in my place. And a couple of years ago, we made a sort of, I think, a final meeting we met up in New Hampshire. Another friend, the one who led the whole operation at his place. And a bunch of old guys,
But war stories, literally.
Oh, we had war stories.
War against smallpox.
I don't know if we have time, but I can tell you a little story about that.
Sure, we have time.
So we, when I was out there, I had to go across a very large river, and the only way across was there were no roads going across, but there was a train. And so I was with one of the older doctors that was that worked in Bangladesh. He was from Bangladesh, and so I was with him, and we were supposed to go to this very large land mass, Rangpur, and we went from Rangpur to I can't remember the names right now, but anyway, going across the bridge, very, very long bridge. We're going across.
You're walking across.
No, actually, we're driving.
Oh, you're driving over a train bridge.
So here we are, we're in the car, and you have to get each one of the ties, you bump, bump across all the way. So we're on the way, and the older doctor said, he said, the people have been caught on this bridge, and he says when they're caught on this bridge, the train comes in and will take them right out because the train can't stop because the bridge is too long.
Right.
So anyway, we went over, we did our thing, we came back, and in the middle of the bridge, the car gets stuck.
Oh, no.
So the older doctor looks at me, and he's sweating, you see. I mean, the car won't start. So I said, Doctor, would you like me to get out and run on the other, so get to the other end of the bridge and stop the train? He says, yes, please do that. So I got out, and I ran, and of course you could look at the water,
Yeah.
As you're going, you have to jump tie to tie.
Tie to tie.
So we got out there, and then finally I was trying to get to the train before it started, but it didn't. It started, and so I stood in the middle of the tracks with my umbrella, waving so they slowed down, and then finally they called me over, and he thought I wanted to ride. So I got into the train with him in the engine,
Yeah.
and I said, and I explained to him, and he couldn't understand what I was
Oh,
saying.
my God.
And so finally he understood what I was saying, and he stopped just before he got on the bridge.
Wow.
So we saved the car, and it turned out that the reason why the car got stopped, I found out later that the fellow that was his driver sold the gasoline, siphoned it right out of the tank in the other place and make some
So you
money.
ran out of gas.
It ran out of gas. Yeah, but it was a phenomenal thing to see the men. You know, people from were the people themselves. I mean, there's a big boatload of men that were working. In those days, they just had sails, and they had crews of people going down the river.
The river, yeah.
So those guys, it was a group of men, and they came out. They went to helped us in really pushing that car off the bridge and singing some kind of a song as they were doing
Yeah, I had
it.
similar-
It was just like a movie.
I had similar experience in Kenya because the roads were just dirt, but if it rained, it would turn into a complete mud bath, and you couldn't. And suddenly, the people from the village would come out and I was with the bishop. You know, we were going from church to church, town to town, and they'd have to push us. We'd slide off the road, and they'd push us back up on the road. And it's anyways, third world adventures.
Right.
But let's move on. We'll never get to we're barely out of from med school with you.
Okay.
I do know also you had some involvement in fighting against AIDS too, as another work, international
Yeah,
medicine.
I did that way later in my life.
Oh, later.
I did that after after I stopped practice and so forth. I had a wonderful experience having had an MPH. I had my boards in internal medicine and went into practice of medicine in West Roxbury, Massachusetts, and it was a great experience. I had a wonderful group of patients, and then when I left practice, there were times when my mother was dying and so forth, and I just spent time taking care of her, and our children were all getting married, so I just spent a little time doing that. And then I went back into sort of the public health arena and did at least 5 years of HIV prevention with a group out of Texas.
No, that's another disease where we've come a long way, and compared to, I remember, frankly, doing a lot of funerals back in the 70s.
Right.
You know,
well, they have wonderful medication now, of course, that keeps people
alive.
But
it's still an issue, though.
Oh, it's a major issue, and one of the most important things is prevention of that, telling people how it's transmitted and so forth, and getting that information out. That's the kind of thing we did.
I remember I also worked in Kenya for a little while. I mean, not Uganda, and there was a big program there. I think ABC, abstinence. I forgot what B is, and abstinence. I think fidelity. I mean, but I'm trying to what the three letters mean. But it was interesting enough. It was a moral program. As much as it was a medical program.
Right. You have to, abstinence was that's number one, and then in keeping faithful.
Yeah.
And then the C was condoms.
Condoms, yeah, right. I want to, another dimension in your life, I know you got into politics. What motivated that? And
I did get into
you
politics.
You ran for state senate here in Massachusetts?
I did, yeah, I did do that.
Yeah.
I got very much involved. This whole thing of the same-sex marriage issue came up, and I have a great deal of respect for anybody in their lives, how they live, but the marriage is between a man and a woman. That's all it is. When you talk about same-sex marriage, there's no such thing as same-sex marriage.
Yeah, well, that's what the Catholic Church teaches.
There's no such thing as that. And what you're doing, and when you say that and you push that concept, what you're doing is you're confusing youth and young people about what marriage is. It's just like the medical profession has fallen back in certain ways and so forth. I think the legal profession has fallen back in many ways. They no longer can take a word like marriage. See, legal is always depends on words and wording and what you say. And when you take a word like marriage and you change its meaning, you're really destroying the legal profession in many ways, and you're not following, you say, the rules, the professional rules of how you act. So there's no such thing as same-sex marriage. That's not a marriage. It's between a man and a woman. So I got
Not a popular position in our culture.
no, not a popular position, but the truth.
Yeah.
And that's what the big thing is the truth. And one of the things that I've sort of learned through my life with regard to that, the truth is exceedingly important. In medicine, we have to stick by the truth. If I were giving people, if I were doing that in medicine, I'd be sued for malpractice by not telling the truth. Whatever is there, reality is reality. And so we have to stick by that and follow that. And so when we stick to the truth, we're actually working within God.
Yeah.
Because God is truth.
Yeah, that's right. And obviously, it's only gotten worse since those battles, where there's no confusion, it's not even male or female, there's total confusion, and children are being, we just see it. It's this epidemic among children, especially girls, of total gender confusion and all kinds of pathology.
That's exactly right. And I think that we all learned, I learned from my father. My father learned, I'm sure, from his father. My son and my daughters learned from me and their mother. What being a man and being a woman. And we know that it's a delicate matter, and we have to teach our children what that's about as they grow up. And so as adults, we understand that. So what people are doing is really not a very adult thing. When you start confusing children about sexuality, you're doing them a major harm, because it's difficult enough to go through teenage years where you start wondering about your body and what's going on and so forth, and that you're not telling them, keeping them online about who they are, what they are.
Yeah.
And so it's so easy. It's deception.
I assume when you became a doctor, you still signed the Hippocratic Oath, right?
Yeah, that's right. When we came out of medical school, the Hippocratic Oath was around. Of course, now
they've completely eviscerated that.
Right,
and changed that.
The whole thing was to do with
abortion,
right?
Suicide, all kinds of stuff. Now, we've been saying I would call it malpractice of doctors giving, puberty repressor, all kinds of injecting into bodies that are changing medicines.
I think anybody that
repress.
does anything to somebody before they're 18 years old in that area, I can't agree with that.
Well, unfortunately, we're out of time. And, again, thank you for your work as a Catholic faithful physician and standing for at least what the Catholic Church understands to be truth on so many matters, which has been rejected and repudiated by so much of our culture. But there's a price to pay, and for that too, of suffering and persecution and ridicule. But there's a whole other part of your life which is how we got to know each other, is your fascinating interest in the Shroud of Turin. So we're going to do another show about this. But I want to thank you first of all, for your life as a faithful Catholic Christian and your witness to that faith through your work literally all over the world. Jesus was a healer, and he proclaimed that we were to go forth and heal, and that is, I'm proud to say as a Catholic, hope you are, that we are still the largest healing institution in the world, the Catholic Church, in terms of medical
that's
hospitals,
exactly right.
as well as obviously spiritual healing.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Well, listen, it's really been a pleasure being with you, Father. It's been great. Thank you very much.
God bless, and I hope you've enjoyed our conversation with Dr. Gilbert Lavoie, and if you did enjoy it, stay tuned or wherever you can find this, on YouTube or whether it's on MMTV, and we're going to do a second show, a follow-up show on a fascinating topic, the Shroud of Turin. So God bless, and thank you for joining us.